Good day and thank you for joining CivilNet today. We're back with our weekly news digest and here's a look at some of the developments of the week. Armenia launches a criminal investigation into Azerbaijan's violations of international humanitarian law. Debates in the European Parliament about Nagorno Karabakh and the Armenian genocide. And a wishful calculation, what Armenia could have had the government saved. On April 13, the Armenian Defense Ministry announced 92 casualties as a result of what has been dubbed the April War, or the four-day war in Nagorno-Karabakh that started on the night of April 1st and continued until April 5th when a ceasefire regime was brokered. Of the 92 deaths reported on Wednesday, 77 are combat deaths. The Defense Ministry also confirmed that Captain Argishti Gaboyan is still missing. Unfortunately, since Wednesday, 2 more military deaths were reported from the contact line following ceasefire violations. There are 125 wounded. Earlier this week, the International Committee of the Red Cross and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe returned dead bodies of 18 Armenian servicemen to Armenia. Primary medical examinations have shown that the bodies carry evidence of torture. In this regard, Armenia has launched a criminal investigation into Azerbaijan's violations of international humanitarian law. On April 13, Armenian Prime Minister Hovik Abrahamyan and his delegation attended the meeting of the Eurasian Intergovernmental Council in Moscow. Prime Minister Hovik Abrahamyan also met with the Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, Dmitry Medvedev. In a gesture of goodwill, Medvedev suggested that the next meeting of the Eurasian Intergovernmental Council should be held in Armenia on May 20. To recap, the Prime Ministerial meeting was originally scheduled to be held in Yerevan on April 7, but was postponed and moved to Moscow when Kazakhstan, a union member country, expressed support for Azerbaijan's rights to territorial integrity and refused to send a delegation to Armenia. Many in Armenia debate that Armenia should have in turn boycotted the Moscow meeting. On April 13, a rally that gathered in front of the Opera building moved towards the Russian embassy in Yerevan to protest Russia's politics regarding the four-day Nagorno-Karabakh war and the sale of Russian arms to Azerbaijan. People threw eggs and pennies in the direction of Russian embassy as a sign of protest. The Nagorno-Karabakh issue was also discussed at the European Parliament this week. During the April 12th session in Strasbourg, the plenary session of the European Parliament held an urgent debate on the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh, where Federica Mogherini, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, stressed that the status quo leads nowhere. The overwhelming majority of European parliamentarians called on Azerbaijan to accept the OSCE Minsk Group proposals for an independent mechanism to investigate ceasefire violations.
The statement of the OSCE Minsk Group is a bit ambiguous because in September 26, 2015, which is almost 6 months ago, with their statement, they were stressing and mentioning that we have proposed such mechanism of ceasefire violations along the border, something that Armenia has agreed to, and we call on Azerbaijan to agree as well. So we do not understand, or this specific statement needs to be clarified by the OSCE Minsk Group itself.
Some parliamentarians called on more decisive steps to be taken in view of the recent developments.
Madam Vice President, you said the status quo will only lead to more violence. That may be so, but it's only so for one specific reason, and that is that Azerbaijan remains an aggressor today, like it was an aggressor 24 years ago. It has violated the ceasefire this time, just like it kept violating the ceasefire on lower scale for a very long period of time, and it does so because it is convinced that everything and everyone Armenian in this region must disappear. Now, this is the reason why it has never accepted anything the Minsk Group has been able to propose. Because anything that it can propose is compromise, and Azerbaijan does not want to compromise, just like the Armenians do not want to compromise any longer with the country that elevates Ramil Safarov to the level of national hero. A brutal ex-murderer reverted to the country by Hungary as it should never have happened. The only thing that will eventually happen in this case is to recognize the independence of Nagorno Karabakh. It was declared in full accordance with the Soviet constitution applicable at the time. It was never accepted. It is time to do so now.
A later session of the European Parliament discussed relations with Turkey. The EU 2015 report indicated that Ankara is backsliding on democracy. The European Parliamentary report also referred to the mass killings of Armenians under the Ottoman Empire, calling it genocide and urging Turkey to come to terms with its past as a precondition to EU integration. The Turkish state-run Anatolia news agency reports that Turkish EU Affairs Minister Volkan Bozir has called the report null and void and added that this is an issue that should be decided by historians. Politicians should not write history, he said. This April's four-day war has raised many questions in Armenia, especially after President Serge Sargsyan's announcement during a working visit to Germany that the Armenian army is fighting with weapons from the 1980s. CivilNet's Ani Grigorian takes a look at just a couple of government decisions and spendings that, let's say, could have changed the situation. Scratching just the surface, turns out that if the government had not granted tax privileges to the telecommunications company owned by Armenia's Minister of Finance, to the agricultural company owned by President Sargsyan's consultant, the counterfeit alcohol company owned by a parliament member, a trucking company owned by the president's cousin, and if the state had just refrained from building two new state-of-the-art centers outside of the capital for its finance ministry and the central bank, costing the state $45 million and counting, Armenia's state budget could have been $90 million less empty this year, or the army could have had 7 Smerch rocket systems valued at $12.5 million each, or about 90 TOS Sonsepyoks, which are heavy flamethrowers, costing about $1 million each, or 20 Israeli kamikaze drones valued at $4.5 million each. And in another story, residents of the Garni village blocked the road leading to Armenia's famous historical touristic site this week for more than 10 hours to protest a decision to install a 28-kilometer-long pipeline that will redirect some of the water from the Azad River to irrigate lands in the Ararat Valley. Residents point out a couple of issues with this decision. First, that the water from the river is hardly enough to irrigate their own lands during the summer months, and secondly, the project will destroy the riverbank. They also insist that the project has gone through because water is being directed to irrigate lands that belong to Prime Minister Hovik Abrahamian and his relatives. Construction works have stopped temporarily until further negotiations. Armenia's security concerns extend from the Nagorno Karabakh contact line well into the republic's border communities. Here's a look at a situation and an interesting initiative. The Berd Women's Resource Center was created to support the development of Berd and the surrounding border communities in Davush. The foundation emerged from the need to find solutions to issues in the region, which are countless. Unemployment, therefore out-migration, living under the gaze and often the fire of adversary snipers, therefore limited access to agricultural land and farming, constantly elevated stress levels, therefore more illnesses, and no accessible health care. Women from these border communities will crochet key tags in the shape of their dream homes.
The idea of the campaign is to, through these key tags, one from each of the villages, is to provide a little bit of income from them. The price of the key tag, about $3 of it, will go towards checking their sexual reproductive health issues, the thyroid, for breast cancer, and for gynecological issues.
The initiative has estimated that for $10,000 US, 200 women will be able to have their medical checkups.
Անխտիր ում որ դուք կհարցնեք թե ինչն է կարևոր, նրանք բոլորը մեծից թե փոքր խաղաղություն կպատասխանեն, այսինքն նրանց համար թե աշխատանք, թե կրթությունը, բոլոր հեռանկարները կախված են խաղաղությունից։
The CivilNet Foundation organized a public discussion in Armenia's city of Noemberian. The discussion, organized with the support of the Swedish embassy, was entitled "On the Border with War and Peace." Noemberian is about 3 kilometers from the Armenian-Azerbaijani border. The discussion was built around security issues and social economic conditions under a no-war, no-peace existence. During the discussion, the speakers agreed democracy will contribute to both the country's defense and economic development. 5 Nobel Prize winners were in Yerevan to take part in the Nobel Days in Yerevan scientific event organized by the Yerevan State Medical University this week. For 3 days in a row, from April 12 until April 14, renowned scientists discussed their discoveries, achievements, and their journey to Nobel success in a series of public and specialized lectures. This is an opportunity for the Armenian researchers, medical students, and aspiring scientists to hear firsthand about research that has become an integral part of the world's scientific heritage.
You just came out of big oppression during the communist time, so you are starting. But I think that you are ideally located in order to develop science. You know, in Israel, now we have gas, so we are very lucky. But until recently, we didn't have anything. We had only the brains of our people. You don't have natural resources. You are very small. For you, the only way to go and to become rich and to go from $6,000 a year per capita income to the Europe level, you know, brandy is very nice, but brandy, you cannot live on brandy, with all due respect. You live on electric chips, you live on sophisticated technology, you live on something that will bring you billions of dollars back for a patent, for thinking. I really hope that with science and technology and with the advance, we can do it without the politicians. I mean, you can really do it. What's wrong with, because it's going via the private sector. And the private sector is free of politics. You know, investment in science and technology and using engineering and using that can go without the politicians.
And that was it for this week. Thank you for joining us.